A county in Maryland is considering between two different rent control proposals, but the end result will be the same: a destroyed rental housing market. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have an interesting article for you today, and it's going to go over two different rent control proposals that are happening in Montgomery County, Maryland. Now, obviously, this is the Northeast. This is part of the country where I say, hey, landlords have the least rights, okay, the least property rights, and this is where they have the strongest tenant protections, and they're always trying to implement all these new rent control proposals because in their minds, this is the way that you keep rental housing affordable. You put an artificial cap on the price, right? And that will magically make housing affordable forever. Well, no, that's not the case. And regardless of which rent control proposal you look at, the end result will be the same. And that is there's going to be a shortage of affordable housing. And guess what? The people who need the affordable housing aren't going to be able to find it. That is the end result. Not only that, but landlords are going to be put in a bad situation where they aren't going to be able to increase their rents enough to keep pace with inflation. And the end result will be properties that are falling into disrepair. Many landlords will decide just to start selling instead of renting their properties out, or converting them into co-ops or into condos. What else could happen? I mean, I've gone over all of this stuff before, and the reason I keep covering this is because I see the trends that are happening right now. There was talk from the White House about, maybe there being a nationwide rent control, and I'm telling landlords all across the country right now, look out, this stuff is coming. Okay, don't be surprised if we see some kind of proposal for nationwide rent control coming up. This is the stuff. They think that these, oh, well, we're going to leave little exceptions here or little exceptions there. None of those exceptions are going to work. Okay, the end result always ends up being the same. So anyway, let's get into this article. Wait. Before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button. Maybe leave a comment down below and let me know what you think. Do you believe nationwide rent control is coming? Okay. Do you believe that the president is going to propose nationwide rent control? I personally do. I also think that there could be proposals coming forward that will force landlords across the country to accept Section 8. But that's a different topic, and let's stick to the one that we have today. So let's get into the article. This article is coming from dcis.com, and it says, rocked by rising rents, Montgomery County weighs two very different solutions. They say the solutions are very different, but they're both rent control. One is just a little bit more strict than the other. One means that landlords will go bankrupt within 5 years, and the other one means the landlords will go bankrupt within 6 years. So let's get into the story. Amid a surge of Maryland jurisdictions passing laws to limit rent increases, Montgomery County Council members are jumping into the fray with proposals of their own. Two separate rent stabilization bills, a more aggressive measure shepherded by at-large council member Will Jawando, and a middle road offering by District 6 council member Natalie Fanny Gonzalez, will hit the council floor Tuesday, likely kicking off months of frenzied lobbying over a debate that has raged in the county for decades. The bills, which reflect competing ideologies about how much leeway property owners should have to hike rents, come after a temporary measure to cap rent increases in the county at 0.4% expired last May. The passage of either would reflect a sea change in the region's housing policy, particularly after the DC Council failed to move in recent years on an update to its own outdated rent stabilization law. Yeah, so they believe in their minds that this is the best way forward for affordable housing. No mention whatsoever of, hey, what is the effect this is going to have on developers wanting to build? That would be the first thing that I would ask, right? Like, how do we make housing more affordable? We obviously need to build more housing, but if the developers don't want to build because you have these rent control proposals in place, then that's going to severely limit the new housing that's being built, which will lead to less affordable housing overall. Now, they always try to say, well, we're going to make exceptions to this rent control proposal for buildings that are, I don't know, 10 or maybe 15 years old, right? They always say that, right? But here's the problem: 10 or 15 years in the terms of a building's life is a very, very short period of time. So, what they are suggesting is that developers come in, build these buildings real quick, right? And then sell the sell the buildings, make their profit, get out, and then stick these landlords with these buildings that they can't make any money on. Well, you know what? That might work as a temporary fix, right? But what the developers and the landlords are going to end up doing is building the highest end housing possible so that the rents will definitely be able to cover the cost of these buildings, right? They're not going to be building any lower end housing. They're going to just be flooding the market with luxury luxury apartments. And you see this in places like New York, right? Where yeah, they're still building lots of new housing, but they're not building any affordable housing. They're not building any actually housing for people who are middle class. They're building housing for the wealthy. Okay. And while I have no problem with that, that's not good if that's the only thing being built. Okay. We're so large, 1.1 million people with a third of the county renting. You're talking about hundreds of thousands of households. And while most of our landlords are doing the right thing and increasing rents at a reasonable rate, even if just 5 or 10% aren't, that's thousands of people that are dealing with this issue. So we need to have consistency and stability in housing, Jawanda told DCist Wamu. Affordability has long been a challenge in the county, where about a quarter of renters spend at least half their income on housing costs. So basically, they threw this proposal out there because even by their own estimates, 90 to 95% of landlords are already doing the right thing. So the overwhelming majority, by their estimates, are already, keeping their rent increases at a fair and reasonable rate. Yet they think that, the solution to this is to punish all those good landlords by throwing these ridiculous policies in there that give them no leeway whatsoever for their increases in costs, for actual inflation, for anything. Okay. So yeah, they basically said, screw those 95% of landlords who are doing everything right. We're going to go after this bad guy by punishing all of them as well. That's ridiculous. That is ridiculous. It's kind of like you're saying, okay, you know what? We have people who are out on the highway speeding, right? And those speeders, they're driving 100 miles per hour in a 65-mile-per-hour zone. Well, 99% of the other drivers out there are driving the speed limit, 65, driving safely, no problem. But that 1% of drivers driving 100 miles per hour, and they're like, you know what? We need to cut the speed limit to 40. So now all of those 99% who were following the law, driving safely, etc., now they all have to drive at 40 miles per hour as well. And the person who is speeding, they don't care. They just continue to speed. They continue to drive fast and, and erratically, etc. And meanwhile, we're all arriving late at our destinations or having to take twice as long to make the same commute. So yeah, punishing everybody because you have a few bad actors out there is dumb. That's my point. Okay. And that covers rent control. That covers everything. Okay, every time I see an anti-landlord proposal and they're talking about, well, we have these bad actors who are doing this stuff out there, I always ask, well, what percentage of landlords are actually out there doing that kind of stuff? And it's never the majority, never. Jawando's bill would permanently cap most rent increases at 3%, a limit, he says, that is consistent with what data show is on the high end of what is already the average hike. The figure mimics similar policies passed last month by the Council of Prince George's County, as well as the city of Mount Rainier, Maryland. Beyond the signature rent stabilization provision, Jawando's bill lays out a broad set of regulations governing how much property owners can charge tenants and when they may do so, including when apartments turn over, during a period of vacancy, and when apartments are in poor condition. So yeah, now landlords got to figure out all these new freaking laws, okay? That's my big gripe, right? Just let us operate the business. Let us, you know what? We can't charge more rent than people are willing to pay. That's the main thing. When the market is a free market, right? A landlord can't charge excessively high rents that people aren't willing to pay. You know why? Because the tenant will go somewhere else where they are charging reasonable rents, and that landlord will be forced to lower their rents down to what everyone else is charging. So you can't convince me that, hey, there's some landlords out here who are gouging. Do you think a landlord, could charge $2,000 a month for an apartment that nobody is willing to pay more than $1,000 a month for? No, they couldn't, because, like I said, nobody is willing to pay double for that place. Nobody. And if the tenant has enough options available because there's enough of a supply, they will just move on to somewhere that is less expensive. So basically, what I'm saying is the free market is what keeps rents reasonable, especially when they allow the developers to build, when they allow the landlords to run their business the way they should be run. But instead, we have all of this government regulation, and the government is actually creating the problem that they are trying to solve. That's my big gripe with rent control. It creates the problem they're trying to solve, which is housing affordability.